Caledonia Township Planning Commission for April 21st, 2025. Macefield, call to order. Macefield. McLean.
Here.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Hold on. Eberly.
Here.
Lindsay.
Here.
Cutler.
Here.
And Curtis is here. I'll make a motion for the consideration of the meeting agenda with a minor modification of moving item B to be first. And you want to do the zoning stuff last, or you want to do them in the?
I guess I would do zoning last.
Yeah, okay, moving B to A, A to C, C to B. Basically moving A to the last, moving B and C up.
Support.
Motion by Curtis, support by Bradshaw. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, we have a meeting agenda. At this time, we have a public comment period brief up to 2 minutes for items that are not on the agenda that have a public hearing. If you wish to speak, 2 minutes now. Seeing none, we'll close the brief public comment period. Motion for consideration of the meeting minutes. I hear there is an adjustment that needs to be made.
Yes, the adjustment would be, under McLean didn't know if it was something they should pursue. Actually, that was John.
So item 8 under commissioner comments, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth paragraph. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yes.
You concur, Mr. Eberle?
Yes.
You're not looking?
I did state that.
All right, so I'll take a motion with, or I'll just make that motion with that adjustment
I'll
to,
second it.
for the consideration of the meeting minutes for March 17th, 2025. Motion by Curtis, support by Eberle. Any further discussion, changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest on any of the agenda items tonight? Seeing no conflict of interest, we will move on to item A, special land use for an accessory building in front of a principal building, 10759 Duncan Lake Avenue, parcel 412332 300-048. Applicant is Aaron Hollister. Ms. Lene, go ahead.
Sure, this is pretty straightforward request by Mr. Hollister. In our zoning district, we require accessory buildings to be typically behind the front building wall of the principal building, unless that accessory building is 200 feet back from the property line. Due to the site constraints being the wooded character of the property, the location of the septic and the drain field, as well as the drain field replacement area, and topographic constraints, the applicant is looking to build a new detached garage closer to the front property line, approximately 75 feet back from that property line. The applicant did provide example renderings of what the accessory building would look like. We spoke on the phone. He said that they intend to match the style of the principal home with a shingle roof and vertical siding. There's a window on that front elevation as well as ingress and egress. The applicant has provided a narrative as well as an aerial image showing some of the site constraints and an image of their home for comparison. We did review the request. The building is within the allowable square footage for accessory buildings in this district and the size of the parcel. It will meet the ordinance requirements in terms of setbacks for the side yard, the distance from the principal building. However, and it will meet the principal building front yard setback, even though it is still closer than that 200 feet. There are adjacent tree buffers bordering this building on the east and west property line. They do not intend to utilize it as a home-based business. It would not contain any dwelling units. They are not intending to use it for commercial business, yet we did provide some recommendations and conditions, since this is a special land use, that it not be used for those things. The applicant is here if you have any questions for them or me. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Lene before I call the applicant up? Seeing none, Mr. Hollister. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for providing a nice, clean packet for us tonight.
Thank you.
With all the questions answered. Planning Commission, do you have any questions for Mr. Hollister?
I don't have any questions. I guess my biggest piece would just be kind of as we look at this and look at the topography, or when I look at this aerial view, it looks like there is a lot of space behind the principal building. So just maybe usually we only approve in front of property when the back is the front, so to speak.
In a perfect world, my preference would be behind the house as well too. Where the wellhead is on the south side of the house makes it basically impossible to get a driveway around there. And if I did, I would have to take out the trees that are the buffer between me and my neighbor at this point as well too, to put in a driveway. That aerial picture even is a little bit older. My neighbor has even taken out more trees on their side of the property line as well too. So I'm basically the only one with any sort of vegetative buffer between us. Plus the property does kind of go off on it as far as the slope of the land. So I'd have to bring in a whole bunch of dirt to be able to flatten that out for a building as well. On the other side of the property is where my drain field is, so I can't get back over there.
And if I remember right, it's been a lot of years since I've been back in that area, before your house was built. That is a pretty decent slope in the backyard, is it not? Because that's all wet swamp.
Yeah, that's wetlands back there.
Lene, process-wise, do neighbors get notified of this, or how does that work?
The hearing requirement is optional.
Have you had conversations with your neighbor to the south?
Yeah, the neighbor to the south, I haven't had a chance to talk to. For the building itself, that we're this far into it, they know that we wanted to put a garage there. They're cool with that. When they cut down all the trees, they asked me if I was ever planning on cutting down any trees, and I told them no. And they said, great, then we're gonna cut down all of ours. So I would hate to go back on that now. They proceeded to take down even more this last week. The neighbor to the north of me knows what I'm trying to do. He's actually, it's Greenbauer Asphalt, that's who will help me do the rest of the driveway, so he knows what I'm doing. The neighbor across the street, he actually has a detached garage in front of his house. He watches the place when we're out of town. He knows what I'm trying to accomplish as well too. So, we're close with all of our neighbors, and yeah, I'm pretty confident everybody knows.
I look at this from my ZBA hat a little bit as well. You know, we have to clear I think eight questions as to why this is, and it is a bit of a hardship. Yes, it could go back there, but require a lot of fill probably to get it to that point. Likely could dodge the well, but let's be honest, that put the driveway through a lot of trees right at the property line as well. Can't bring the driveway across the drain field and the septic field, or septic tank, because, well, they won't last, so. And there is a tree buffer to some extent between the road and where this is going. It's not pines there anymore, is it?
So to the north and south of my driveway that's there are cedar trees. I have cleared it. I've cleaned it up. It used to just look overgrown mess, so we've cleaned it up. I've put mulch underneath the pine trees. Everything that was just vines and crap, we've tried to pretty up a little bit. We've done landscaping around the house. Len Hartz will do the landscaping around this building as well too. So my stepfather was a contractor. Will be very particular that this aesthetically matches the house as well too, or else I'll hear about it every time he drives into my driveway as well, so.
What about to the east of where you want to build it, basically between the road and,
There is a large tree there that I purposely left there, and there is some pine trees there as well too. So there will be a tree buffer in between the road and the building. You're not just gonna be looking at a white side of a building there.
okay.
And if there wasn't, then I would be planting pine trees there, cause I wouldn't wanna look at the white side of a building when I pulled in.
Anybody else have any questions? Although not a public hearing, is there any neighbors who want to speak on this point at all? Just asking, not required, so. All right, Plan Commission? Unless you have further questions?
My only question, they covered it, was about the neighbors.
Well, I'd like to offer a motion that we approve the special land use for the accessory building in front of the principal building, 10759 Duncan Lake Avenue Southeast, to include the 6 conditions at the end of staff's write-up.
We have a motion by Eberly, support by
I'll support.
McLean. Any further discussion, questions? Roll call or not, Lene, voice?
You can do voice.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, items B, site plan review, Broadmoor Mall, 7163 and 7171, or 7171 Broadmoor on parcels 412308, 151,002, and 008 for an 11,143 square foot retail strip commercial building. Applicant is Sanjay Chabra. And agent is Feenstra Associates. Ms. Lene.
All right, thank you. This is an interesting site. I know it's a parcel that we've all noticed for several years. At one point, there was a house on this site that was torn down several years ago. This is that interesting triangle parcel where Broadmoor and Craft meet. Sanjay's been working on redeveloping this site for several years and is now at the point of submitting the site plan for consideration. As I mentioned, the site is zone C2. It's within the overlay district. There are currently 2 parcels, and the intent is to combine those for a total of 2.09 acres. The footprint of the building would be about 11,000 square feet. They're looking to do retail strip uses as well as a carry-out restaurant. They have provided 53 parking spaces. We reviewed the site plan, so just a few comments here. The setbacks and dimensional standards are met. We did note that a detail of the dumpster enclosure, I just did not see that in the plan set, but they did make reference to the enclosure being block and matching the architecture of the building, but we would like to see a detail of that. The circulation, the traffic circulation meets the ordinance requirements. However, we did send this to MDOT and the County Road Commission. MDOT did say that they would like to see a traffic study for this driveway placement and coordination with MDOT and the Road Commission. So that is something that we want to note in this plan review. And perhaps the applicant and architect have some feedback on that item. We did note that the applicant has not included pedestrian connections from the proposed sidewalk and pathway. Prior to this meeting, I did speak with the township engineer, and as you know, M37 is being reconstructed. There are plans happening right now for what the intersection at 76 will be. I believe, I've heard that there are some changes that MDOT is making to include a light as well as crosswalks crossing 76 and also Broadmoor. And that would mean that we can extend our pathway. And so in conversations with the township engineer, we're talking through whether it makes sense to have sidewalk or pathway on the west side of Broadmoor from 76 to Craft. We do have several projects that have come before the Planning Commission. We've required sidewalk in those locations. We may be able to see if they could provide pathway. Nevertheless, for this property, we might want to include in the conditions that along Broadmoor, it be either sidewalk or pathway, depending on how the design plans move forward with M37.
I'm not gonna say that I said it should have been a pathway to start with, but
We did specifically talk about that in the conversation, so kudos. All right, moving on to the next item, the landscaping. We did note that a couple additional trees are required, not many, but 2 more evergreens, another shade tree. I'm sure that's something that the applicant will be able to find space for that within their site plan. We're not too concerned. They are also proposing a 3-foot berm instead of the required shrubs. We did want to note that the approved plant list is on table 28C, and some of the species that are referred to in the landscape plan are not included in our approved plant list. So some changes will be needed to that landscape plan, as well as a note added that the landscaping be irrigated. We included a condition that any at-grade mechanicals be screened from view. Sometimes we don't see all of that detail on the site plan, but we always want to include that condition in our plan set. It appears that the lighting spreadsheet, there are too many lumens per the applicable lighting zone, so that, that lighting plan would need to be modified. I already mentioned the enclosure. Signs would be reviewed with the zoning administrator. We do note that there is too much parking along Broadmoor. We restrict the quantity of parking along Broadmoor. Only 40% of what is required by ordinance is allowed between the building frontage and Broadmoor. So 6 spaces between the building and Broadmoor would need to be removed. Moving on to page 5, the building and site amenities. We did note that our building material requirement is for brick, wood, native stone, textured concrete masonry units or glass product. The applicant has suggested that their exterior material be a wood look aluminum siding, which would not meet our material standard. We do not have a description of the color palette, so that is something we might want to talk about at this meeting. The aluminum batten is not included in the list of materials to meet the 75% requirement in our architectural standards. The storefront entries, we do require that glass be clear, transparent, non-reflective, and the storefront glass is labeled as tinted. We also note that the entries are not recessed. However, they do have awnings at each one of those entries, so we feel that the intent is met with that that requirement about the recess. However, we would like to see the non-tinted, clear, non-reflective glass. Item E is about the flat roof and having a parapet that would screen the RTU units. It was difficult to differentiate and determine whether those were screened in the entire building based on the elevations that were provided, so that's something we want to see clarified. So that would be the end of the comments related to the architecture. We did include in the list of recommendations, if we move to that direction, quite a few items that I've already talked about. The one item, though, that is not included because it's more recent information would be, I'm sorry, 2 items. So, well, sidewalk and pathway is already there. But the MDOT traffic review, so there's some question about whether a right turn lane would be required. But the challenge there is the proximity of the driveway to the craft split off to include a full right turn lane. So that's why MDOT wants to review this request. There's also a question whether that center turn lane on Craft, which the road commission is requiring, how often that turn lane would be used, because people heading south on Broadmoor most likely would continue on Broadmoor to take a right in to the development versus turning right on Craft and then making a left in on Craft. So there's some conversation there about the center turn lane and where a crossing might make sense, how folks might cross Craft on foot or on bike.
The sidewalk's on the west side of Craft, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So a couple things to think through, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I know the applicant's here, they're architect, so they're engineer as well, and they're prepared to answer any questions you might have. There's also the review letter from the township engineer in your packet.
I have a question on the parking, just for the simple fact that it's a unique triangular site. What flexibility do we have? Because I'd hate to see the parking move to the north side just to take the 6 out.
Right.
So they're not on the, because that's the direction everybody's coming anyways, so it's, what,
Well, I mean, one thing could be 49 spaces are required, and they're providing 53. So there are more spaces than are required. So if the applicant were to stick with the required number, we'd be closer to that 40%, closer to not exceeding that 40%.
are the parking spots, let's call it the southeast corner of the lot that face south? You got me?
Maybe.
Closest to M37.
Yeah, those were ones that I thought could be, removed.
Those count in that,
They do.
how far, so they couldn't remove the 3 back ones, they'd have to remove anything in front of the building, correct?
Correct. Some of these. Is that what you were looking at?
That's exactly what I was looking at. Is that what you were thinking there, Miss Macefield? That I was talking about?
I just agree, I don't think we should have the parking along the front. I'm not about
No.
changing that, but those are definitely easy ones to get rid of. You don't have them on the other space, but that's
Yeah.
their problem to figure out, not ours.
I just wanted to make sure, like, if per se that, like, are we allowed to make that change as a planning commission? to say 53 is okay and the way they have it is fine, or?
You did with the Robinson Dental,
Okay,
and they did have more parking than what was required as well. But we did talk about not making that, well, they're
A practice.
correct.
practice.
No,
The reason why you allowed that was they did have a plan for expansion. So it was a unique case. But
Commissioners?
you asked if you can vary the parking. It doesn't explicitly state that. It does say that with shared parking, you can modify the number of spaces. There's no explicit provision for waiving that 40%.
All right, and one quick question, then we can come back to that. I know we have a new list of plant material that we're talking about. How's that aligned to what we have?
That new list of plant material, the proposed plant species on this plan are not being added to our list, so they would still need to modify their plant species.
Just didn't want to do one thing and then the next thing do another.
I think it was hornbeam or something, if I recall.
All right.
Minute.
Other planning commission members have questions for Lene? Diane, looks like you got something.
No.
Nothing?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right, we'll have the applicant come up. Please state your name, or applicant's representative, or whomever's gonna do the talking. So, because we have some other stuff on the agenda tonight, we have citizens sitting here, we're gonna try to focus in on what you're not meeting with our standard, versus telling us how awesome your project is, and we know that, we hear that from everyone, but we just wanna focus in on the items that are preventing us from being able to move forward with this, so, go ahead.
Do we want to hear from
Yeah.
them? I do have a couple of questions as maybe you work through this and address this, where my curiosity is on the site plan that you gave us, you have like store names, and so my curiosity is, where is that in terms of locked in? And then we also have this, some storefront sign thing. So if we can just be clear on that piece. So as you're working through that.
Yeah, so give us your name so we know how to reference you.
Sure, Dave Hanko with Feenstra. Yes, and I will keep it short. Yeah, the 40% parking in front of the building. It's interesting that you brought that up because reading the ordinance, we read it a little differently than Lene, that 40%, only 40% could be in front of the building. And I didn't, so that's why we kept these 40, and we did view this as a side. So, yeah, if you could, Lene, take another look at the zoning ordinance, I guess it's up to interpretation.
I could read it. Not more than 40% of the total number of required parking spaces may be placed in the area between the building and the Broadmoor Cherry Valley Avenue right-of-way.
And we've always interpreted that from the front of the building on everything we've done, if I remember correctly.
We have. But I understand the different ways of seeing that.
Okay.
David Barman, the architect. Just one comment about parking if you were looking for a way to be flexible. This is a strip mall. It might have one takeout restaurant. It might have two takeout restaurants. We don't know right now. We don't have the clients. The signage on the building was just giving the clients an idea of what kind of building we were designing, but we don't know who the clients are yet. That required amount of parking would go up if we had two takeout restaurants instead of one. And so that would allow us to change our perspective on what's required. Just a thought.
Well, somebody has to talk.
I won't have the answer, so please. Well, I try my best. Go for it. Hi, Sanjay Chabra, but I don't know. Ask me any questions, and I'll probably point at them.
How do you?
Well, I mean, do you want us to break this down? You have the list of requirements that do not comply with what?
What I just said was that your requirements are based on the assumption that there's only one takeout restaurant. There could
Or
be two
based
takeout
on
restaurants.
what you put in your packets?
No, actually, on the packet, it doesn't say we're gonna have one takeout restaurant. Because we don't know that yet.
You just randomly drew things on here.
Well, by that
That's
logic,
what
you
I'm
don't-
Those are
hearing.
random, that is
from you.
random.
By that logic, you don't know if you're gonna have any tenants, and we
Correct.
don't know if we can allow any parking.
No, what I'm saying is.
You can't have it
think
both
about
ways.
a typical strip mall. You have 8 units that you have to rent out. And the point is that a certain number, we can have more parking if it's a takeout restaurant. That's written in your zoning ordinance. So if you allowed 2 takeout restaurants in this building, we could have more parking spaces, and our problem with those spaces would be less of a problem, according to your own ordinance. That's all I was saying.
But we don't know who the tenants are,
That's
so you
absolutely
can't
right.
have it both ways. You can't say it could be and then say, but we don't know who's going there. Just making it very clear, you can't have your cake and eat it too tonight. It's not gonna fly for us.
Well, we didn't say there was one restaurant either.
I saw a
There
reference,
is.
I saw a reference to a drive-through,
No.
Zero drive-through.
Zero drive-through.
No,
it's zero drive-through.
zero drive-through.
Zero
okay.
drive-throughs.
In your parking calculation, your parking calculation breaks down the 1 space per 250 square feet of retail, 1 space per 150 square foot for carry-out restaurant. So that is referred to in your parking calculations. Yeah, correct. A 1,450 square foot restaurant.
Now, we're not here to debate about locking you into what you can and can't have. We're just saying, with what you provided before us tonight, this is what we have. You made the choice to do it that way. I assume restaurants require more than a retail facility, so you have more parking spots, so we're assuming that's what, if you're gonna talk, you gotta be in front of the mic or I'll get in trouble.
But if we change the drawing so that we plan on having 2 restaurants, would that make the parking situation become better? Because we can issue an addendum and say, we made a mistake on our site plan, we wanna have 2 restaurants, takeout restaurants in this facility.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm happy to look into that.
Yep. I think there's
I
other bigger
understand.
items going on here as well.
Yeah, if we can't figure out the parking, we're never gonna make it past the other things
Yeah,
that
so
are
we're just
very
gonna-
large items.
Yes. One, landscaping, I'm not impressed with a berm instead of shrubbery and that kind of stuff. If you'd like to do a berm and the shrubbery, not a problem, a la C Circle K. I prefer the berm and the shrubbery, but that's not what our requirements say, so,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct. Some places do a mix, and they are showing, berm in a portion of the front yard, and then some of the portion of the front is part of the drainage feature. They do have evergreen and deciduous trees on either side of the berm, but no shrubs, correct?
And because you are the gateway to Caledonia Township, right there, We want it to look nice for our citizens and everybody south of us who drive past it every day to the tune of, how many cars, Tim?
30,000 or so.
So, thus the reason you're building it here, thus we want it to look nice. Joe, do you wanna hit up the architectural? I know you're just itching to do it, so.
Well, I think it's pretty clear what our standards are and where you align. I do agree with Lene that the awnings help provide intent and hit the design intent. And I'm okay with that. I mean, that is the purpose, but there are other things, back to what you just said, of the look and feel. And you all won't be driving by it every day, but we will. And so it's important to us, we spend a lot of time on those standards, that we hit them. So that's one commissioner's,
If anybody would like
Point
to
of
address our
view.
concerns about the architectural standards and not meeting our ordinance.
My first thought about the zoning ordinance and its limitation to hardy board and wood is that it's limiting us to technology that's 20 years old, or maybe 30 years old. I have had projects that have had hardy board on them, and it was not the best product available. We would like to have you consider using a product that's called Vesta Plank, and that is a product that is very well, presents itself very well, and if it's okay, I'll give you pictures of it.
That's fine. I just wanna point out, hardy board isn't the only choice to meet our standard here.
There's only two siding products convention, wood and hardy. And we would like to consider using Vista Plank, which is a very expensive
right,
aluminum
there's
that has
brick.
wood printed on it. So it looks like wood. And it's the Cadillac of siding. We're not trying to save money, we're trying to make the building more elegant.
Thank you.
And for one of you, I do have a brochure, which actually looks a lot nicer than my copy of the brochure.
I think anything on standards, we
This is what-
definitely
this is
would
what-
have to see big
Oh, we-
sample size
Actually, to be honest with
pieces.
you, if you say we approve the site plan as shown, but we won't approve the materials until you bring in samples and show us a colorful picture, that's what we'd love to hear. We'd love to do that for you. If that would be your preference.
Usually we'd put what you, B before A. Like, we'd expect to see those before we approve a plan.
And I wasn't aware of that.
Well, we don't do partials, I'll put it that way.
Well, this, in effect, the literature that I got said that if these items are taken care of, the ones that are at the end of your report, it is the recommendation of staff to approve this site plan review. That would be there's a section in there that says you have to meet the siding requirement, right? So.
By
that could
brick,
be on that
wood,
list.
hardy board, native stone, and tinted/textured concrete masonry units. Those are your choices.
And broader, right? Item 10 says architecture shall comply with. The siding is one piece of that architecture.
Right, we aren't trying to break your zoning ordinance. What we're trying to say is that there are other materials that weren't thought of when the zoning ordinance was written. And Vesta Plank is one of those products.
Completely understand. You have to understand, every architect who walks up here in front of us tells us that what they have is the next best thing, and that our ordinance should take that into account. It doesn't matter. You know, could be this, could be that. I guarantee the next person comes in, they're gonna have a different
This-
product that they want on there.
This, like something like this, would be helpful to see applied to
We
Your-
would love to do that for you. I didn't know that, see, the owner is in a position right now where he's trying to make sure he gets his approval and he can afford his building, and then he's going to pick the colors of the exterior and the materials of the exterior.
It doesn't work that
And,
way.
and so, when we came to this meeting, we told you that we were going to use, what kind of siding we were going to use. The area that has the wide vertical spaces is going to be a board and batten material look. So it'll look just like wood board and batten, except it's out of aluminum. And the parts that have the horizontal siding are gonna look like wood, like those little graphics I gave you in the front. So we thought we had presented it adequately. I had talked to both of these people here, staff, and talked to them about the intent of the zoning ordinance. And I felt like we were trying to meet the intent of the zoning ordinance. What we're creating here is a beautiful mall that won't cheapen the city, it will, or the township, it will improve the township. And that's the, I mean, this is a really nice mall that is not your average mall. This is like the Fox dealerships on 28th Street. This is a very nice mall.
All right, so here's our dilemma. You don't meet the standard. You're asking for a change to the standard. You're telling us, the way I'm hearing it, and probably other people as well, this is what we're gonna do, take it or leave it.
No, I'm not telling you that. I'm
Because-
saying, could you open up our options so that could we present to you a color chart using 3 materials?
We would want to see, like we see with other applicants, a colored rendering exactly how you're going to build it. And that's what we do.
And that's what that does, except it doesn't have color. And I didn't know that you
We
needed
can't
that in
see
color.
that. We can only imagine, and
Yep.
we get to choose what it looks like
Yep,
in our mind because we have no other option.
yep.
You can say one thing, I can interpret it however I want to interpret, that's my choice. I don't know what it looks like. I can ask our citizens in the back, hey, do you have any idea what this is gonna look like? And they're gonna shake their head at me going like, no, we don't know what it looks like. We don't want an ugly thing in our township. We can't tell from this.
The only thing
They're
you
the
can't-
ones we answer to, not
The
you.
only thing you can't tell from that drawing is what color those objects are. You
Well,
know what the brick is, you know what the siding.
I'm making it very clear, we need to see that.
You need to see the color.
I don't even want to talk about how easy the lighting ordinance is to understand, and then we still don't comply by it.
Well, our engineer, he did a light layout. We got the response back from the engineer that said it was too bright. He changed the site lighting layout, and apparently it's still too bright.
It's pretty easy, it's math.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, I get it, I graduated Caledonia Township, or Caledonia Schools, it's not hard.
I
It's
understand.
just add, subtract, multiply, divide. And
We aren't-
literally, the
we aren't
spreadsheet comes
debating
out
that.
and says fail, and you submit it to us as a fail.
We aren't debating that. My engineer will do that one more time until it gets low enough that it meets your zoning ordinance.
So you have to look at it from our standpoint. You're providing us information that clearly doesn't meet our ordinances, and something as simple as lighting, you're just not doing it. That doesn't look good to you, like you want to be a good neighbor in the township.
Yeah, I just look at your report that you sent to us, and I say, it looks like the recommendation of staff was to approve this zoning, or the site plan with these items taken care of. What items you're bringing up are on this list.
Yeah.
We would love to take care of those items.
Well, and what we've done in the past is we don't leave it on staff to solve problems after the fact, because it may not be what we interpret it, and that's what this planning commission has been appointed to do.
Well, it sounds like the applicant is willing to comply. So I guess I would move that we table this until we get an application that meets the requirements.
We also did receive that new information from MDOT after the staff report was issued.
Which I understand, typically MDOT does that to us. So there is a motion, so I need either support.
I mean, if it's the things that are in the list and they're willing to deal with it, then, I mean, is there any other discussion?
I
shouldn't-
mean, I have a
shouldn't jump
number of comments, so as
Then I
long as
apologize.
it remains open after.
Yeah, I'm
so-
not gonna vote right away.
But I agree, I think tabling is the result that we should achieve tonight, but when they
Okay.
come back, I would like them to address.
Let me do my little thing here, and then you can, when I
Yeah,
say that, is
well,
there any further discussion?
Sorry if I jumped.
No,
jumped-
it's all right.
jumped.
So motion by Everly, support by Lindsay, to table the, item. Is there any further discussion, Mr. Bradshaw?
Yes, I would like more detail and understanding. You've shown a trail on the west and north side of the property. As far as I can tell, that's all on private property. I don't see any easements so that the public technically, can or should traverse across this if they're not doing business on your property. So I think we need some easements, and maybe someday the township will plow paths and we might need a reason to be able to go along the path on your property, so please address that. In my opinion, putting ADA plates at the driveways is inappropriate, but if the road commission or MDOT requires it, that's fine, they supersede my opinion. I understand that you don't know who your tenants are yet, but I'm worried that 2 dumpsters will be enough for 8 tenants, depending on who they are and what trash they generate. The township engineer's letter talked about a cross connection to LMCU. I don't see any drawing or reference to that on your plans. Please include it next time. I'd like to better understand how deliveries are gonna work on the property. There's really no spot for a delivery truck to sit without being in the way. Personally, I would like to see a different ADA parking plan. It seems like the front of the building is M37 and in general where you want your customers to be. Putting both of the handicap spots only in front of 2 of the 8 businesses doesn't make sense to me. If I'm handicapped and I'm in a wheelchair and I want to get to the far north suite, then I have a really long distance to travel to get there. So I think breaking up the 4 required spots that you have to better get those spaces spread out amongst those front doors would make sense to me. Let's see. As far as I can tell, fire suppression must not be required by building code based on your 2-inch water service. So just confirming that that's your intent to not sprinkler the building.
That is correct. Sprinkling is not required.
Engineering wise, I'd like to see an elevation of craft at the center line of the road, roughly where the, let's call it 500-year flood is gonna cross. If the whole site is inundated with water, how does the water get out? Just in that worst case scenario. There's no information on the plans as shown. And I agree, we need color renderings. To my knowledge, none of us are architects at this table, so while you do this every day and it makes sense to you in the way you see it, we do this once a month and sometimes have renderings and sometimes don't. So it's really difficult to see on a 11 by 17 sheet of paper what material is what. So would appreciate having that additional detail. And then personally, I think calling this a mall is irresponsible. A mall is a large enclosed shopping center. This is not a mall in my opinion. This is a 11,000 square foot building along a main road. So personally, I would rather that you called this project the Broadmoor Shops because I don't think it warrants being called a mall. But that's just my opinion.
PPES to make it fancy.
Shoppies.
Shoppies.
And then I guess I just also wonder if you got permission from all these businesses to put their name and logos on your plans, because I don't think that's appropriate either. I wouldn't do that in the future.
And, go ahead, Jody.
Well, I was gonna say, especially if Chase Bank is not an applicant of your plan with having their sign and how it's gonna be lit, and
Considering they're a mile and a
I
half down the road.
thought they were a future signed on the line tenant.
One thing I have as well, and this is probably a road commission, so either Tim or Miss Lene, I agree that a left turn in there on Craft would be a traffic nightmare waiting to happen. It does make sense you'd come in the front on Broadmoor. Do we have any say about having something to prevent left turns, like something out there, concrete, like barrier, like you can't turn left here, or not?
Well, I think that might be part of the conversation that will be happening with the road commission in terms of where a crossing might be, a pedestrian crossing from the site over to Craft, that west side sidewalk. So there could be something, in that space. However, I do know that the road commission is perhaps wanting that left turn lane in, but if the planning commission wants to include in the minutes that there's a concern about a left in there, that it could be a spot for a crossing, pedestrian crossing,
I'm just afraid
with the backing up.
the backing up of traffic there. Even a left out is probably a little sketch. I'm willing to entertain it if somebody's willing to punch it across there, but I do believe the left out is not as bad, but it probably isn't good either. I do like that it's access from both roads. Please don't take that.
Yeah, I think we need access from both roads, or you'll have a flow problem in the front. Especially as we think even about deliveries. I think that is a key point with whatever the business is in there. All of these things likely will have some form of truck arriving.
I mean, because let's be honest, where that Michigan left is, they're right across from Lake Michigan. I'm not saying I've ever seen it done or done it myself, but there is a way to get there from Lake Michigan. And this does make it, if you come out and you want to go northbound, you have a short shot across 3 lanes. Well, 2 full lanes.
Probably part of why they want to see some of the traffic study.
I think so too. There's a traffic flow. Just knowing the people coming out of Craft, getting across the 2 lanes into that 3rd lane. And when I say 3 lanes, that shoulder's pretty wide through there, so you're really getting across there. So, anything else Planning Commission would like to mention before I call a vote? All right, seeing none, we have a motion to table by Everly with support by Lindsay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes to table, and you have your marching orders. We'll see you, I assume, the 2nd meeting in April if you get your stuff together.
Maybe you could bring a sample of that material if you're intending to use it.
Or May.
We have a meeting on May 19th.
Yep, that's what I meant. All right, I lost my meeting minutes here, hold on. File. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item C, public hearing to consider zoning ordinance amendments and consider recommendation to Township Board amendments to the following section: 2.2, 3.10, 3.11, 3.29, 3.36, 3.50, 3.59, 19.2, and Table 28A. Ms. Lene, I think it's best to take these. Give us an overview. I know there's public who would like to comment on this.
Yeah.
I don't want to
And-
get too far in the weeds and make them sit
No.
longer.
No, this is a variety of amendments. Some of them have come from our zoning administrator, who meets with, dozens of applicants a week, including, builders and sign companies and others. And so often in the heavy use of the ordinance, things come up. Like, why is the signage, referenced here and not there? And, so that's why some of these come up. Others we've talked about before, and we kind of punted on some of them. And so we're bringing them back. You'll recall we did a whole batch of amendments last year. And those were kind of the easier ones. And so now we're bringing back these for your consideration. I know, Mr. Chairman, you weren't here when we brought these to the Planning Commission for discussion. A big one is that accessory building item where, we have heard from residents that there's a desire to calibrate the size of accessory buildings to lot size in all of our districts, except for the District R4, which is primarily our multifamily district. So that is one of the big amendments here in Section 2, and it impacts the height item as well. No shared driveways. This has just come up where we have existing shared driveways. And so we wanted to make sure that if the driveway existed prior to the ordinance taking effect, because a few years ago we limited shared driveways. We used to allow it for 4 parcels, and we reduced it to 2. So we wanted to make sure that they are kind of grandfathered in. So that's why that is there. There were just some cleanup items where our table didn't match the narrative and the private road standards. The fire chief wanted something added about speed bumps. They're often getting calls from neighbors about people speeding. There was some language about the mail kiosk and defining what a roadbed is, because those are referenced in the ordinance. The recreational vehicle parking, that was something that came from the zoning administrator, that in all of our districts except for those 2, which tend to be our larger lot sizes, kind of more rural area, the A and the RR, we don't allow RVs in all but the A and RR recreational vehicles can only be in the side or rear. So in A and RR, you can park them in the front. So we have residents saying, well, how come we're seeing RVs in the front yard in our neighborhood, in our area, but not in these other zoning districts? And so it's more of this kind of consistency. Those are larger lots, so they probably could be in the side or rear versus in the front. So that's why that one is there. Internal access roads. This has come up with some of the commercial site plans that we've reviewed where we have outlots and driveways, and the applicant is considering these internal access roads as just drives instead of roads. And so we don't really have standards for the width or the pavement or curbing. So we wanted to add a new section to provide some guidance for those internal access drives. We see those in multifamily developments. We see them like in the Broadmoor commercial development where Gildan Woods is. The light poles that came up from our chairperson. The architectural standards, we talked about wanting to wrap office into those. I know we want to look at industrial too, but this was one that we all agreed on. The signage was in response to sign companies who are reviewing Chapter 19 and they think they're all good, and then they don't realize that Chapter 3 has that requirement about the dark backgrounds. So we wanted to pull that into Chapter 19. And then the landscaping, we realized that a couple of the tree species on our list are susceptible to different diseases are not the best in our climate zone. So we had 2 different landscape architects review our plant list and give us some minor modifications to that list. So that's what we have for you today. The garage, we had 2 definitions of garage, public and private. We never used the word, I don't think we used the word public garage in the ordinance. And so there was confusion about private garage because we also have accessory building. And it's like, is the private garage an accessory building or not?
We don't use garage private either
We-
in the zoning.
yeah.
ordinance, So that's one of my questions, like,
So that's why we wanted to take that out and just add in the definition. So we're removing the 2. We're adding a definition called garage, and we're just saying that it's an accessory building. Mostly because our users of the ordinance say garage, right? They don't come in and say, I want to build an accessory building. They want to build a garage. So that's why we have a definition of garage and we say it's an accessory building. And then they can proceed with the Chapter 3 standards for accessory buildings.
is that it?
That's it.
I appreciate the work that's gone into this.
Sure.
I know I have a slew of questions because I look at this from what unintended consequences may come from changing this. As always, my focus is citizens own their property and shouldn't be limited by the township unless it's some egregious thing that we as a community as whole don't want to see happening. So that's the lens where I approach the ordinance. I don't know if anybody else approaches it that way, but I don't believe we're an HOA as a township, nor do I believe we should be an HOA. So with that being said, I know there's some citizens who would like to speak on this. So this is a public hearing, correct?
Correct.
So at this time, I will open, unless any other planning commission members have anything to add prior to the public hearing portion of it. Just making sure. So at this time, I will open the public hearing portion of this. Please come up, state your name. We don't necessarily need your address, but it's helpful. And we do have a time limit of 3 minutes. Is that what we normally do?
Yeah.
So keep it short and brief, and we're happy to listen to you.
Hi, I'm Jim Scavo. I live at 6937 Campo Lake Drive. I'm just here to, in support of changing the ordinance for the restriction on a garage or accessory building. I believe today it's 592 square feet or 24 by 24. I'm interested in replacing a garage that was probably older than all of us put together on my property, and she's starting to look a little sorry. I've tried to keep her up as best I could, but you know, rot and whatnot is getting away from me. So if I'm going to rebuild it, I'd like to rebuild it, you know, in something more reasonable. The current building is already bigger than 24 by 24, so going smaller doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm just looking for, you know, something that's more reasonable for that building, and based on my, you know, my total acreage for the property between my house and the adjacent property that I want to put the building. I have about an acre. So based on that, I'd be looking to put a little bit bigger than a 24 by 24 to fit some of the, you know, things I have. So I don't have my boat and my RV and stuff sitting in the yard. They're tucked away in a clean building. So that's what I'm looking for.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim. Do you happen to know, you're not required to, do you know what your zoning is over there? Are you R1, 2, 3?
I don't know what it is. I know it's.
It's
yeah,
okay.
I don't know which one it is. I'd love to know that.
We can look it up if you stick around. There's a map out there. Next, you know, we're really happy to have citizen engagement. Normally, I do this and no one's here, so thank you.
We're
for
glad to
coming in and
be
being
here. My name is Michelle Joy Young. I live at 6989 Campbell Lake Drive, so I'm Jim's neighbor down the street. I don't know if you're familiar with that area at all, but we have lakefront properties with across the street parcels that many of us have wanted to build accessory buildings on over the years. And the process is, obviously arduous if you have to go for a variance and with the size restrictions. I mean, specifically, I have a pontoon boat, which most people on the lake have some kind of boat. The boat does not conform well to a 592 square foot outbuilding or accessory building. It's difficult to get anything besides the boat in that size. And I also have a very small RV that I would love to park inside to protect my investment, but also to protect the beauty of our neighborhood. If you drive down that street, you'll see there are beautiful homes on Camp Paul Lake, and many of the outlots have many toys parked outside because we don't have the ability to build accessory buildings to house them. So I think it would really, and I'm just talking for our neighborhood because that's where I'm familiar with. I know this happens in many other neighborhoods in Caledonia as well. So I would advocate that, yes, proportionate to the size of the lot, we want to see it reasonable, but keep it in mind that we're just trying to park things inside to keep the community looking nice for our neighbors and for ourselves as well. So I'd advocate that you go ahead and pass these changes to the zoning for the accessory buildings specifically. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Michelle. There's finger pointing, so I know there's 3 more back there.
I'm Mark Belting. I live between Jim and Michelle. So, all of the same issues that they've discussed, that's what we've been dealing with and like to take care of. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Are you on the other side?
Good evening. I actually live with Michelle, and I just, Gary Von Meyer. I wanted to say that we're looking at a design that would be 30 by 40, so 1,200 square feet, with a 14-foot sidewall. I mean, we haven't obviously created any exact blueprints, but that's kind of what we have in mind to park an RV and a pontoon boat, as Michelle mentioned, inside.
Sure, and do you know what size your parcel is?
I don't, but I bet you Michelle does.
Yeah, it would be just under an acre after the out parcel is merged with the primary home parcel.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Yeah, last man standing.
Hi, I'm Tony Sutter. We just moved in at 7519 Cherry Valley. And I just wanted to hear about the recreational vehicle changes, just because we have a longer driveway and we have a slab actually on the side of our driveway that at some point previous owner had parked a pop-up there, and we park our camper there, so I'm just, it would change my parking space if I had to move it back. And I'd probably have to take some stumps out to move it to the side of the house. And it's really perfect where it is, so I was just curious to I just came here to hear how that was gonna go, so.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, Tony.
Yeah, thank
Brand
you.
new, you're doing better than a lot of our residents.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yep, seeing none. We will close the public comment period. Yeah, let's take these one by one. Let's start with what I believe to be the easy ones and cross them off the plate.
I always love that.
So we are not gonna talk about garages or accessory buildings right away because there will be that. Driveways and private streets. I like what we're doing here. I'm just questioning, and again, it's probably a Todd question, or maybe my associate next to me can help me out as a more civil guy than I am. The private driveway, the 2 and the 4 lots, there's no road bed required for that. Now, I get the fact that it's a driveway and not a road bed, but we also want, they do put a road bed in some way, shape, or form under that. I'm just wondering if there should be road bed requirements in that. It's not a hill I'm dying on, I'm just asking the question.
If Todd's happy, I'm happy. I don't really have an opinion.
Yeah.
I thought it was, back when this was first drafted, I thought it was interesting that we called it roadbed. It's just, that's not how I had seen it in cities or other places that I've worked, but.
It's called base, right?
Yeah.
There is a driveway, it says that driveways shall be constructed on a base of stable soil and a sub-base consisting of at least 4 inches of sand, and on top of the sand, at least 6 inches of compacted road gravel. It's already in that ordinance.
And I apologize, my ordinance is packed away. I have
That's
yet
okay.
to find it. And I didn't
We're
want
happy
to
to get
ask
you a
for
new one.
a 800-page document at the last minute, so.
I don't know if that addresses your concern.
It does and it doesn't. I just want to make sure that we have, again, consistency, ease of use, because at the end of the day, the private driveway is what our citizens are going to use. And I don't want them hunting around for it. To, again, make it easy. Not opposed to it, just don't understand that. Shared driveways, I'm a little confused, because we're saying we don't allow them now.
No, we do allow them. We allow shared driveways serving 2 lots. In the table, we still have private driveways serving up to 4 lots, adding, and we have that caveat, if split, executed prior to the date of the ordinance.
So as the average citizen, what would be the easement for a brand-new private driveway serving up to 4 lots?
We don't allow a brand-new private driveway serving up to 4. So it might be that, that private drive could be less than 33 feet today. All we're saying is that, let's say there were 4 splits and only 2 houses were built on that shared drive. That shared drive easement today is 26 feet. They want to build those last 2 houses. Well, technically, the shared drive easement does not meet the 33 that we have today. So what we're saying is you don't need to get more land in that easement to build those 2 houses. We will accept the easement that you have on the books. We're not going to make you find more land to get to that 33. That's all we're saying. And those are for only the only ones that have existed prior to the ordinance. It can be difficult to go back to those property owners to get that easement.
Yeah, and I'm not asking, please, I am not advocating for that. I'm just advocating for clarity here, because we say, we call it a private driveway in the table, but in the wording, we use shared driveway.
Oh, yeah, that should probably change in that table.
And so that leads to confusion.
Yeah.
And then if you look at item 1, it says a shared driveway must have a 33-foot wide easement unless easement, which is what the table says. And you know me, I'm all about just saying it in one spot.
Well, I know. But we could change that to, we should change that to shared driveway. I don't know why we haven't caught that sooner.
Yeah. This is a minor type of thing. And I don't mean to monopolize this, please jump in if other people have different opinions. H7 to the, let's call it the 4th line up, it says requirement of the county, lowercase. It probably should be capital C for County Road Commission. I know, nitpicky, but we're changing it.
Is that on page 5?
That is on page 5.
I'm not
About
seeing
right
what that
here.
is. Thank you.
Page 6, item 20, we reference shoulder elevation, And again, we use the word private street, so there's, if we change shared drive or private driveway, or, we have private street, we talk about shoulders, but we have roadbed. The roadbed is underneath the shoulder, I assume, help me?
The shoulder is part of the roadbed.
Yes. So there seems to be, item 20, I think, needs a different.
Well, and also, we do have private streets though, right? Private streets are different
Yeah,
than a shared driveway or a shared, what was the other
Yeah.
thing?
No, just shared driveway
Shared
and
driveway or
street.
private driveway. Those two, I think, are, but a private street is different
Yeah, it's a whole nother
than a
section.
shared driveway.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure on 20, we're not saying we should switch
No.
that language to
Right.
align with a shared driveway.
Mr. Chair, for
Yes, sir.
the public that has sat through an hour and 15 minutes of our meeting, do you have any comments on the accessory building
I have a
stuff?
lot of comments.
Why don't we get to that? So
Okay.
if they wanted to leave early, they still could.
Well, I want to hit, because this guy talked about recreational vehicle parking. That was next on my list.
Okay.
If we can hit that one up. To me, this looks like a great opportunity for a neighbor to call the township on a neighbor when we use the parking or storage of recreational vehicles. Let's say I come home from my camping trip and park my camper out there for a day or 2 or 3 because I came home on Sunday and I don't have time to clean it out. And it's sitting there on Monday or Tuesday and the neighbor calls and says, hey, the ordinance says there's no parking. Like, what does no parking, what is the time limit of parking? What is the definition of storage? None of those items are defined in our ordinance.
I think we have a, I don't know, administrative guide on, as we receive complaints, how they're addressed. And the first complaint is, we'll go out there and check. Sure enough, yep, there's a violation. We usually send them a letter, hey, this is the zoning ordinance, you need to move it. We don't issue a ticket. I don't even think we do the second time. I think it's the third time that there's enforcement. So I think a lot of that is just being neighbors and talking to your neighbor. If my neighbor needs to park his RV, frankly, in my front yard for a few days, whatever, it's a few days. Like, that's just being neighbors in a community, I think.
But we have people who are not neighbors.
Right, and we
And
have tools to take care of that for those that aren't.
I agree. I'm just saying if we're going to codify it into a ordinance, we need to be careful of what restrictions we're putting on our citizens. Like for somebody who has a existing concrete pad that may or may not be in front of the house, we're basically telling them what you've done for years, you can't do anymore. And I do have a problem with, I think a lot of this stems because it goes back to the accessory buildings, is that we have restrictions on the size and they can't build them big enough to put their vehicles and what they want to do inside of it. And I believe that's why Bound just did away with their size requirements. You build what you want. You can build a 20,000 square foot house, but depending on your acreage, you're only gonna be able to build a, X size accessory building, so.
Well, you could always attach it to your 20,000 square foot house.
You could, but you
Then
don't have to.
Now it's a 50,000 square foot house.
But you may have a piece of property that doesn't allow that to happen. I'm just saying.
This is also, just recall that this is in the required, it references the required front yard and required side and required rear. So often, if the required side yard is 15 feet, but the actual distance from the house to the side property line is 40 feet, you can still park it on the side of your house, just not on that 15 feet closest to the property line.
That's very helpful.
Does that help?
Yeah, that's like extremely helpful, because if I was reading this, I wouldn't,
There is a differentiation between just a side yard or the required side yard. So
It
the
says-
required is
Should we,
that
should we
dimension.
add the required side or rear yard?
It says that in the language.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
Is
no
that,
change
like,
to
It-
that.
It's, yeah, okay, it doesn't say it in the summary, but it says in the actual,
Oh, so, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
well, I was looking at your changes to the ordinance, so it's already in the ordinance.
It's already in the
What
ordinance
about
that way.
required front yard?
It's referenced there too.
So we can still store stuff in the front yard as long as it's not within the required,
Well, it says that such recreational vehicles shall not be parked or stored in any location that is between the street right-of-way line and the main front wall of the building, except that such recreational vehicles may be parked or stored in that part of the driveway located outside of the required front yard or side yard. So again, let's say your house is 100 feet back, your driveway is 100 feet long, your front yard, required front yard is 50. So from 0 to 50, you can't park it in the driveway. From 51 to the front of the house, you can park your RV there.
then why are we doing this?
We're doing this because right now, we're adding A and RR. Right now in A and RR, there are no standards for recreational vehicles at all. They can be in the required front yard, the required side yard, they can be right at the property line, they can be anywhere. A and RR, anywhere.
What's the required setback in A and RR?
In A and RR,
Because obviously it's more,
of course, because they're bigger lots. So side yard in A is 20 feet, rear is 50, front is 50. In RR, the minimum is 20 for side, rear 50, front 50, they're the same.
your RR, by the way. So the front is 25,
The front is 50.
50.
So
That-
we're doing this so it's the same requirement in all of the residential districts.
I think creating consistency with all districts provides more clarity than,
What you said makes sense to me now, because before I was interpreting, and I think anybody else would interpret it, that you just couldn't do it. You couldn't park something in front of your house. So I'm good with that. I'm gonna look at my citizen that spoke on it and see if I see a nod or a,
I don't understand the 25 and 50, that's from the road to the.
So the RR 50-foot from is required. So from the right-of-way, which, different story there, it's probably 33 feet on Cherry Valley, if I remember right. So 33 feet from the center line, that, and then 50 feet from that. So you would be, call it 83 from the center line of that road. And then you could park whatever you wanted after that, as long as it wasn't within 25 feet of the, 20 of the side yard. Makes sense to me. That's why I ask questions. Make sure our citizens understand. All right. I feel much better that we talked about that. Thank you
No
for
problem.
doing that. All right, accessory buildings.
I want to start with a question on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I looked at accessory buildings, I looked at buildings, the definitions of both are pretty vague. And I had a question, is somebody's shed from the Home Depot sitting on 4x4s a building?
If it's under 200 square feet, it doesn't count. But if it's more, which it could be from Home Depot,
Then it would be an accessory building.
So in my experience, if it's on a foundation, it's a building. If it's not on a foundation, it's typically not considered a building, but we don't define it that way. So I want to make sure we're consistent. with that.
With the less than 200-foot storage shed?
With anything. I mean, you can go buy one of these, I don't know, Amish-built cabins and bring it out, and it's not necessarily considered a building unless it's put on a legal foundation. And I think we need to be clear about
But in our
that.
case, we say it's over 200 feet, so it counts as having an accessory building on your property, whether it's on a foundation or not.
In practice, I haven't run into a lot of folks that think the same way as you, John. The square
Well,
footage
this
working.
is, I'm not saying that's right, I'm just saying that that's something I've been exposed to.
Yeah.
Well, the way that we differentiate buildings is, did you look at the definition of structure? Usually, something is either a building or a structure.
Okay.
And the structure is anything except a building, constructed or erected, the use of which requires permanent location on the ground or attachment to something having a permanent location on the ground.
So a building is always a structure, or it's not necessarily a structure? That's,
Depends how big it is. If it's 199 square feet, it's nothing. After it gets to 200, then it starts to count.
Well, and what's permanent?
well, I'll read up some more. I'm
Yeah.
not expecting to be educated in one night. That's too much to ask of you folks, so.
I have an issue with, right off the bat, with the garage private, because it does talk about accessory. It says it's a type of accessory building. It either is or isn't an accessory building. It can't, because we don't list any other types. So, is it or isn't? It doesn't say it's attached.
It doesn't have to be attached,
No, well, exactly.
so we don't want, it could be attached, it could not be attached.
So what you're saying is if it's not attached, it's an accessory building as opposed to a garage.
A garage is an accessory building.
Whether it's
Accessory
attached or not.
buildings can be attached or not attached.
At the least bit, I think type of should be removed, but
Well, like a shed is also an accessory building.
yeah. But we don't, the definition doesn't say, I don't even know we have a definition for shed.
We probably don't.
So
So just take out the word type of.
it either is or it isn't, right? Because then what is the accessory buildings?
Yeah.
And really, I mean, the rest of the definition is fine. I do find interesting the old definition had 3 vehicles in
Right.
it, in which I thought of like, well, crap, if that is the case, then it really doesn't matter if I only have 3 vehicles in my accessory building. I can build whatever size I want. Who cares about
Yeah.
the table?
Yeah, that was
So-
just, we really needed to remove that.
I mean, it was a loophole I didn't know about, but apparently I should have. On the accessory buildings, under the, and I'm sorry for the citizens, I'm going in order here. We'll get to the table here in a hot second. The exceptions, I believe exceptions 1 and 2 could be combined into one. 2 basically says the same thing as 1, but it only adds, there may be up to 3 accessory buildings. So I think there needs to be some, I think it's the same note, just they added.
It just gives you the ability to go to the planning commission for more than 3.
But they always have that. We don't need a special note for that, do they? Do we? And couldn't we do it in one note?
If you're doing more than 3, it would have to go to the planning commission.
Understood.
Yeah, I can, we had our township attorney review these, and I can
Yeah.
tell him, like, or ask, could these
There's
two be
gotta be a way to
combined?
combine them, because they're basically copy and paste until you get after the word, 2,400 square feet.
Well, it's basically saying if you want to do more than 2,400 square feet, you would go to the planning commission.
Mm-hmm. But the first one also basically says the same thing. Either that or I'm dumb and missing it.
Well, on the first one, they don't have to come to us, like, that's what they're actually allowed for, with.
Right.
But the second one, they're allowed to build up to 3. After that, they have to come to us. Which is the same thing as the note up above.
Okay.
You following what
I'll
I'm saying?
talk to them about that. I don't think it changes,
I'm not
I don't
looking to
think it
change the
needs-
intent.
No, right.
Just clean up. Because 1 references 2. Let's do it all in one. Note 3. I don't think we should list the height here. This is, we can say the height in table 3.1, because if we change it, we have to change it in 2 spots.
Well, then we would remove the table entirely, because this number 3 also says you can get a greater height by coming to the planning commission.
No, I think we need the table to say 792 square feet. What I'm saying is, in here it says an accessory building in the R4 shall not exceed a height of 18 feet unless a greater height is approved by the planning commission. I'm saying that shall not exceed the height listed in table 3.1. So we're not saying 18 in 2 spots. Because it'll get changed in 1 spot and not the other. Sorry, that's my engineer. Say it once, reference the other.
Got it?
All right, accessory building size. Makes sense to me to add those smaller, what we would consider smalling zoning districts in there that are actually larger lots. I mean, if you own 10 acres in an R3, you should be able to build 2 buildings up to 5,000 square feet, according to the table. Does anybody have a problem with that? We've already had special use where we had somebody come in and need that.
I don't have a problem, but I have maybe even just more of a question. Is there anything, so let's say it was a 10-acre lot, but now they decide they want to make it 2 5-acre lots?
I have your
or-
answer.
Oh, great. What would that be?
You would,
Renee?
you would have to conform to the ordinance, meaning you would have to either take your accessory building down or make it smaller somehow, but we could not approve any sort of land division or request that does not comply with these standards. And we've had that before.
All right. Now, my favorite, this table, which my opinion should be flushed, but I'm probably not gonna get there, or at least remove the word lot area from the lot, because I'm going to address Michelle's issued directly, you know, they're allowed to build a 1,200 square foot building, accessory building, on something smaller than an acre, not a problem. But if that same person actually owns 1 acre of land, that you lose the right of way in that calculation and you go down. Even if your parcel goes to the middle of the road. Which Diane's does, mine does.
Does that, Doug, does that get after the split with parcel and then this outlet? Because I know that was the word that was used.
So what they have is, they have their issue, I believe, because it's a separate lot, not joined together. Keep nodding if I go wrong.
would be to join.
They can't build on that one lot because you can't have an accessory building on a lot that's not part, you have to have a dwelling on your lot to build an accessory building. I don't think we have that issue.
It's the definition of lot area. The lot area excludes the right-of-way.
Right, so if they combine the lots,
But none of this is proposing a change.
We're not proposing a
We're
change.
not proposing a change to
I
that.
am.
But that's what Doug is asking.
Oh, that's what you are bringing up, an additional,
because we
that
have
is not on
people
here.
that want to build larger items, but then they get whipsawed because their property tax bill says they own X acres, but that's not the way we do the calculation. I mean, frankly, I like Bound Township. We use them as a, you know, yardstick when we put together this table, which is arbitrary in nature anyways. They have since flushed their table and leave it up to the citizen to build whatever size they want. I'm like 30 by 40, telling you right now, I have just a little bit bigger than that, 36 by 48. I don't have a lot in there, but I'm gonna be very close to parking stuff outside. And I have a car, actually 2 cars parked in there, and a Kubota and my work bench. I've used up 1,900 square feet, and I'm happy to have anybody over to tell me, you know, to get rid of something, but I'm the average citizen in Caledonia Township.
So you're looking to not calibrate this by lot area?
My opinion is flush the whole thing. There's people who are against that, at least get rid of the area and lot.
I would need to give that a lot of consideration and see what we're talking, because then all of a sudden you're talking about a shed. You're talking about a storage building that's bigger than your principal dwelling.
Mine is,
Could be.
100% mine is. Even with my addition.
But you're still conforming to the guidelines.
Yeah, I just think the guidelines are restrictive to citizens and should be, they can build, let's say I'm on a 3-acre lot, or 2 pretty common size. I can build a 10,000 square foot house, but man, if I build a 2,000 square foot,
Well, they have to come
36
here,
by, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
but
it
why?
makes, it's an exception.
But why? That's my point.
I think you might need to move to Bound Township, Doug.
I think
I
there's
feel like we're
citizens who
talking
think
about
like I
two different
think.
things.
I think the table is great, and I think the definition is great, and I don't think we should make any changes to it.
Again,
We spent a lot of time doing research getting to where we are. We vastly increased the sizing when we did it, and we have vastly less zoning appeals because of the changes that we made.
and I would make the argument that people would build bigger if they could.
They can live in Bound Township.
I have a clarity comment or are you saying the proposed table that's in here?
Yeah.
When you
I'm-
make that comment,
I'm
you're
fine
not
with-
saying, you're fine with less than an acre, 1,200, you're not saying go back to this.
No, I'm fine with what I see right in
That
front of me.
396.
Mhm.
Though I do have, that does bring up a point. I noticed R4 went from 396 to 7, it doubled. From the old table. I
Wait,
assume
not
that was
R4.
intentional. Hmm?
Yeah,
R4,
In R4, yeah. It doubled the size.
It, just to fit, you know, 2 cars.
oh, from the 272 up to 792?
It went from 396 or 3
Mhm.
something to 792. So we want to make it clear, we are changing the table, we're just changing it, you know, so the argument of, we are changing.
And we have very little land in R4. In fact, it's mostly multifamily, 60th and Craft.
But you're gonna
But yes,
have,
correct.
you're gonna have more coverage, less green space on an R4 with this size than you would on a larger lot, even if they built a larger building.
Correct, and that you would still have to meet our lot coverage standards. So even if you could get more, you may not be able to do it if you don't meet the lot coverage.
But no lot coverage standards in AA or RR or R1, 2, and 3.
No, not in AA. Maybe you've already looked at these. I think we have general lot coverage in our general provisions chapter.
Just something to point out.
Yeah. Did you want to vote? We have lot coverage in section 3.55. No more than 50% of the surface area of any lot shall be covered in total by building structures, streets, paved surface. So it's for any district. That's why it's in general provision, so it applies across the board.
Yeah, so basically you can cover 50% with whatever you want
Yeah.
unless it's an accessory building.
Accessory buildings are included in the lot coverage calculation, so even though you can do that 700, if you are at 51%,
Well, I'm saying in an
Yeah.
RR,
any district has
Yeah,
lot
the-
coverage.
right, so you're allowed 50% coverage. If you had 2 acres, you could, by the coverage
You
section.
could buy the coverage, you could just pave a bunch of land, right? You may not have, you know, yeah. many
But yet
things.
we're gonna limit the size of the building.
Well, I
Got
think
it.
that's why.
No, I'm okay with the
exactly
coverage,
why.
don't cover more, like,
No, I mean, that's exactly why we need the additional requirement to limit the size of the accessory building, so people aren't putting up a horse barn that's half the size of their property.
but they can build a house.
And they could build a horse barn just because of agriculture exemption.
Yeah, but
Anyway.
I get where you're going.
Yeah.
He's playing counter, but right.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, and it is a big expansion over what we had before. I mean, I have a much smaller accessory building that I built prior to this. I'm happy with it, it works, but I could have built twice what I put up under this. And I think people are gonna feel that when they have that opportunity, that it is better. I don't think, I wanna say we should get rid of any restrictions.
Nor do I.
Yeah.
But if we said 30% and do away with the table.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah, some places say 30% of the rear yard, you know?
Do
Yeah, there's all
whatever- do
different
whatever
ways
you
to
want
skin
back
that
there.
cat, yeah.
I've seen 35%, because I guarantee in a 30 by 40, just being around barns, accessory buildings, whatever we wanna call them, The pontoons that they have nowadays, I don't know if you have a double or a tri-hull. Get a tri-hull pontoon, good luck getting it through the door to begin with, unless you get a really big wide door. And then you have your jet skis or whatever, you've used up the 30 by 40 like that. And I think that's a lot of the, let them build it to what they need. Otherwise, we are going to have what we're trying to do someplace else. You can't park crap outside. So on one side, we're saying, don't park stuff outside. On the other side, you can't build it big enough to hide it inside.
I think though we also built this originally, I mean, there were things coming to us every other week.
Because it
We're
was
like,
an arbitrary small number.
This isn't working.
Mhm.
Since we've done that, we've taken care of a lot of it. And now there's another thing that the zoning is coming up, and we're looking at that, and okay, what does that look like? How do we take care
I agree.
of that? But this table came up because what we had before was confusing. So all of a sudden, when you start telling people, we'll figure out 30% of land area, like Doug, you're gonna get that because you're in tune and you have engineering mindset and all of this. But it would be constantly people calling saying, what size?
But they call
Can I
now
build?
and ask what size they need.
Well, there's a,
I've
Then-
asked Lois
then they
that.
can
there's a quick and
reference
easy
them.
answer. if
Right
they do.
here.
Well,
Here we go.
it's not easy because they'll say, hey, I own 3 acres, and Lois will look it up and say, well, actually you don't, because there's a right of way, you need to subtract that out. You can only build this. So it's not quick and easy. I've talked to Lois about this. She does get questions quite often about how big, and in discussions with her, people say, oh, I wish I could go bigger, but I guess I'll just build this and live with it. Because they don't want to come before us and pay their $200 and risk the chance of not
Well-
getting approved from it. So, I said my piece. I don't know, what do we do with this, Lene?
Well, you would make a motion to recommend the amendments as discussed, with the change, page number 1, remove a type up and just say an accessory building. Page 2, I think that your changes are format, they're not, substantive, so I don't think there's anything on page 2. 3, page 4, it would be changing private to shared, that's just a error, it's not a change to the intent.
But I'd want to make sure that we're not referencing private driveway anywhere else in the ordinance. Not just what we're changing. You understand where I'm
Yeah.
going with that?
Well, I think we do have just driveways, private driveways, but these are specific in this table to shared drives, because it's serving 2 lots and 4 lots, so that's what we're changing there, is
Okay.
that. Page 5, it's just capitalizing and a period at the end.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Page 6, page 7, nothing, page 8, nothing, page 9, nothing, no other changes.
Actually, signs. Actually, we didn't get to that. I'll make this quick. Page 9, I believe there needs on item 2, curbs.
Page 9, item 2, curbs.
Last sentence, no parking signs. I think we need quotes around the no parking in a capital P.
Thank you.
No parking signs may be required. You could read it,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there's no
No
parking
signs.
The
signs
architect that
required.
was here
Yeah.
would've.
Yes,
Yeah.
we would have,
Uh-huh.
I did that just for Ms. Cutler, 100%. If she didn't catch it, I'd be embarrassed. General sign provisions, the illumination. I get the fact that the sign people don't like to read it in 2 spots. The problem is, by putting it here, we also left something in the lighting section about signs.
So wait. 19.2 already has this. We're just adding the sentence that's underlined on page 10. See section 3.50E26.
Got it, thank
That's
you.
it.
I'm done talking about that, miss that.
Well, I think it's really good that we've discussed all this.
I have one more. Table 28B, large deciduous shrubs. Isn't sumac an invasive weed? Are we suggesting that that is going to be planted in our community?
Ooh, good point.
No, none of the landscape people flag that.
I just
So
Googled
I
it.
don't know. Is
Google
it
agrees with me, yeah.
Google? Okay.
Yeah. I think we should strike sumac.
Think we
I
should
think
take it
so
off?
too.
Sumac.
Sumac. Are we sure nothing else on this
I
list
didn't-
is invasive?
That one existed on my parents' property as a kid, so I knew about it. I didn't know these other species, but.
How about we caveat the motion as long as the items listed are not determined to be invasive?
Love it.
We all good with that? On 28A and B, I guess.
That's fine, but who's checking?
Well, staff. We don't like to push stuff to the staff, except when we like to push stuff to staff.
It's all right.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I think that's good.
All right, I'll make an attempt at this. All right, make a motion to recommend to the board amendments to the following section of the zoning ordinance as modified shortly. Sections 2.2, 3.10, 3.11, 3.29, 3.36, 3.50, 3.59, 19.2, Table 28A and B as follows. Remove type of from garage, private definition on page 1. Staff to work with attorney to combine, if possible, exceptions 1I and 1II. Working, change the description of private drive and shared driveways to match and ensure all references, and that might, just pausing here, we may have to change other possibly zoning ordinance sections that aren't on the table here, correct? Possibly. We'll find out. To match. Item 5, capitalize county and add a period after engineer. On page 9, quotes around no parking and capitalize P in parking. And please help me, did I modify or strike sumac from table 28B and any other items on table 28A or 28B that staff determines is considered invasive?
Yeah, I'll also just look at our ordinance. We might just have a general standard that says non-invasive species, so.
Yeah, but we shouldn't list it.
Right.
Did I get it all, everyone?
I think so.
All right, a motion is made
I would second that.
by Curtis, supported by Everly. Any further discussion?
Good summary, Doug.
Took notes tonight. Roll call, Maysfield,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
Bradshaw.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Everly.
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Cutler.
Yes.
Curtis votes yes, motion passes. No unfinished business, public comment. Anybody would like to speak for 5 minutes? Seeing none, we'll close public comment 5 minutes. Commissioner comments. Anybody have anything to talk about tonight?
No comments, but I will be gone for the May 19th meeting.
We will have a meeting May 19th.
Anybody else?
Nothing on the May
Fifth.
5th.
It was canceled, correct?
We will cancel.
Okay. Anybody else not here on the 19th or have any other comments? I will say, this is directed to I talked about this before the meeting with Ms. Lindsay, but I do appreciate her comment regarding MDOT and the landscaping, that the township and the village should be aligned with landscaping along the corridor. And I encourage the township to work with the village so we can get a beautiful corridor along with that. Correspondence and staff updates.
I just wanted to reiterate, at the last meeting, we did share that there's a Michigan Township Association training on planning and zoning. Ms. Lindsay signed up for that. That's May 28th in Kalamazoo. If anyone else wants to sign up, Allison will get you signed up for that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Support?
Motion by Everly, support by Bridge. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We made it through April.
Yeah. Even though I had said it right. You know what I meant. But seriously.
I wish it, but I wish it did.